Bakhmut holds. Chinese plan. Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's go. If you want to see content earlier or extended clips or bonus content, head over to our Patreon. Links in the description box down below.
A year has passed since the launch of Putin's full-scale unprovoked invasion of Ukraine.
Okay.
What was supposed to be a quick and victorious war for the Kremlin, according to virtually everyone but the Ukrainians, has been dragging on for more than a year, and it does not look like it will end anytime soon. The Russians are attacking several battlefield sections, developing their success around Bakhmut, while being repelled everywhere else. Ukraine is defending and bolstering the capacity of its army for the upcoming counter-offensive. The diplomatic front of this war has been particularly lively in the described period of the second half of February, as US President Biden unexpectedly visited Kyiv, while China has made its peace proposal public. We're going to talk about this and much more in this video. What we can't talk about is information gathering by both sides.
Come on
in this period,
let's get
battles
into it.
continued raging in the Vuhledar, Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Mariinka, Kreminna, Bilohorivka and other battlefield sections. Despite almost daily frontal assaults of the 40th and 155th Naval Infantry Brigades and the 5th Tank Brigade on Vuhledar, the advantageous defensive positions of the 72nd Mechanized Brigade and the 68th Jaeger Brigade helped to repel each of them. They even reportedly liberated the southern outskirts of Vuhledar on February 20th. The Ukrainian officials claim that more than 130 Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers have so far been destroyed in the Battle of Vuhledar by portable anti-tank weapons in ambushes, artillery and mines. Russian military bloggers have been criticizing the commander of the Eastern Military District, Colonel General Rustam Muradov, very strongly for his reported role in this botched offensive. But it looks like Russia will continue to target Vuhledar, as there have been several reports of new units being deployed to this sector.
Will they be able to hold that position then?
Russia succeeded in making only minimal gains. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia has already deployed most of the forces belonging to the Western Military District to battles on this front, without much success. On February 18th, elements of the 4th Guards Tank Division and the 61st Naval Infantry Brigade captured Yanikivka. On February 20th to 22nd, the 75th Guards Air Assault Division, BAR's infantry battalions and regular units of the Russian army made a small amount of progress west of Kreminna, while the LPR 2nd Army Corps gained some ground around Bilohorivka. In this period, Russia captured more land around Bakhmut. On February 18th, Wagner mercenaries captured Paraskovivka and made progress from Blahodashna towards Zaliznianska. The capture of Paraskovivka means the Russian forces have control over the junction of the MO3 TO1513 highways leading to the northern outskirts of Bakhmut. This was followed by progress in the Yahidna and Stupka districts of Bakhmut. At this point, Bakhmut is attacked from the north, south and east, and Wagner units have been making gains in the city, making the situation for the Ukrainian defenders of the city worse. As of March 1st, Ukraine still controlled the TO504 highway and the settlement of Ivanivska on it, which has prevented the Russian army from cutting all the supply lines and trapping the Ukrainian contingent in Bakhmut. For now, Ukraine is holding Bakhmut, but they may reach a stage where withdrawing from Bakhmut to save their units would be the most logical scenario.
Let's get into that point.
Zelensky implied this on February 20th by saying that Ukraine will keep defending Bakhmut, but not at any cost. On February 28th, the Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine, Hanna Malya, admitted that the situation is difficult in Bakhmut, reinforcements have been sent there. The decision to hold the city is a strategic one, not a political one. So we may see a Ukrainian withdrawal to the next line of defense rather soon. There was some notable activity in the Mariinka and Avdiivka sections of the front too. Elements of the 150th Motor Rifle Division and BAR's battalions have achieved some progress inside Mariinka by reportedly bypassing the center of the town and advancing on its south on February 16th. The former commander of the separatist DPR, Igor Girkin, claimed on February 21st that the Ukrainians had gained some ground from Kamyanka towards Vasilivka, which was later confirmed by the reports of the Ukrainian General Staff. A very important development occurred in Mariupol, which should not be ignored. On February 22nd, the Ukrainian army struck Russian military assets in the city.
Nice.
Mariupol is just beyond the range of HIMARS, which excludes the possibility of a HIMARS strike. The Russian military correspondent on the ground claimed that they are definitely bombing us with something new, which exacerbated speculations about the weapon the Ukrainians used to make this strike. Some speculated that it was the ground-launched small-diameter bombs, which have a range of 150 kilometers. The United States pledged GLSDB to Ukraine in early February, but few expected it to arrive within such a short period of time.
Yeah, that'd be crazy if it
The
has.
New Voice of Ukraine speculated that this could have been a Ukrainian-produced weapon based on the Soviet Smerch MLRS. The Ukrainian command has so far been understandably coy about specifying the weapon they've used in these strikes.
Nice.
But the words of the spokesperson of the Ukrainian army, Natalia Humeniuk, demonstrate that they will continue. At this stage, we can only say that distance is a very relative notion. The Mariupol front is not absolutely unattainable for us. The ability to make long-range precision strikes would be massive for Ukraine. Russia has somewhat mitigated the threat of HIMARS by moving some of its assets deeper into the occupied territory. This option would not be available for the Russian army if Ukraine possessed long-range precision systems. For now, an offensive from Belarus looks even more unlikely, as on February 23rd, Lukashenko stated that he does not see any danger from Ukraine
even
anymore.
Even today,
as
it's
of
not
early
gonna
March,
happen.
Belarus has not blamed Ukraine for the attack on the Russian A-50 aircraft stationed in Belarus, which was reportedly carried out not by Ukrainian drones but by Belarusian partisans. In the second half of February, Russia continued targeting Ukraine's critical civilian infrastructure. On February 16th, Russia launched 32 cruise missiles on Lviv, Poltava, Kirovohrad, and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts, only 14 of which were shot down by the Ukrainian air defenses.
Oh no.
2 days later, Russia launched 16 missiles at Helmenitsky and Kryvyi Rih. On February 27th, 14 Shahed drones were launched on Ukrainian targets, 11 of which were eliminated. On the following day, Ukraine retaliated by successfully destroying a Rosneft oil depot in Tuapse with a drone, and attempting several other UAV attacks on Russian territory. Late on February 28th, Russian sources reported an explosion on the Yeysk airfield, which was supposedly caused by a missile strike.
Interesting.
This festive season,
How
switch
did
to the Google Pixel 8 Pro.
how did the missile
Get the
strike
phone
hit
that you-
there?
Notably, the intensity of Russian missile and drone attacks has significantly dropped compared with the onslaught in the autumn and winter of 2022. Perhaps
Any
there
reason
is
for
some
that,
truth
guys?
to the Ukrainian claims that the Russians are running out of missiles.
Okay.
Recently, the Ukrainian military intelligence chief, Kirilo Budanov, claimed that Russia could produce only 40 cruise missiles monthly. That is roughly what Russia uses in a single attack. There have been no new reports of Russian purchases of Iranian drones either, which may explain their decreased usage.
Interesting.
This has
40 a
allowed the
month?
Ukrainian
That can't
energy
be
infrastructure to recover to a certain extent, as according to Ukrainian officials, Ukraine has produced power appropriate to its needs throughout February and mostly restored energy to households. With the coldest months behind us, it is possible to assume that the Russian tactic of bombing the Ukrainian people into submission and making them revolt against their own government has failed.
Yep.
According to Zelensky,
You just
the Russian
strengthened their
offensive
resolve.
has already started. Most military analysts agree with him. According to different sources, Russia is attacking several axes and is already deploying its reserves to the Vuhledar section and the North Luhansk front. But some disagree with this assessment. For instance, Konrad Muzika believes that the Russian offensive has not reached its apex and that many mobilized soldiers are still in reserve. The head of the Avdiivka Military-Civilian Administration, Barabash, claims that Russia has amassed 160 to 190 battalions in the Donetsk area.
Yeah, that's the big
Assuming that
main
Russian
push, though,
battalions
isn't
are
it?
undermanned and have 500 soldiers each, that would still be a formidable number of 80 to 95,000 soldiers.
Whoa.
So far, the Russian offensive has been underwhelming. Russia has carried out a mobilization to turn this war around, and it must
it's
have
had no
some
major
notable
impact.
success on the battlefield if it hopes to get a military victory out of this war. But the Russian military continues to be hindered by the low morale of its soldiers, conflicts between different groups of the army, some suspect decisions by the command, and recently revealed ammunition shortages. It also looks like the Russian command is trying to make changes on the tactical level to offset some of its shortcomings. According to a Ukrainian military officer, Russia has been switching from deploying battalion tactical groups to assault units in offensive operations. Assault
Changing
units
tactics.
are smaller and more flexible, which
Okay.
makes sense,
Okay.
as Russia has had trouble launching offensives with larger units since the start of the war. The Russian offensive will demonstrate if this switch makes the Russian army more effective on the battlefield.
This would be interesting.
There have also been reports about Russia considering using its air force more actively. Russia has so far failed to translate its massive numerical advantage in military aircraft to air domination due to the successful use of portable air defense systems like Stingers and self-propelled anti-aircraft guns like Gepard by Ukraine, and the unwillingness of Russia to risk more losses of its aircraft. But if we believe the claim of the Ukrainian military intelligence that Russia has brought 450 military aircraft and 300 helicopters to its airfields near Ukraine, then we may see a change in this tactic. Reports indicate that the Russian military continued suffering from internal problems during this period. On February 16th, the financial chief of the Western Military District, Marina Yankina, was found dead under suspicious circumstances in St. Petersburg, adding to the list of mysterious deaths of Russian political, business and military elite members. On the same day,
that's how
the Wagner
Putin
group
runs
started
his
complaining
regime.
about the lack of artillery supplies. They released a video complaining of shell hunger, and then another video showing scores of dead bodies of Wagner mercenaries, blaming this on a lack of artillery shells. This was followed by a launch of the #GiveShellsToWagner campaign by Wagner supporters on social media. Wagner, and specifically its leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, blamed this shortage on the conflict
Getting
with the
into the
Ministry of
juicy
Defense.
part, guys.
Everyone points their fingers above and say, Yevgeny Viktorovich, you know that you have difficult relations there. You should go and apologize and repent, and then your fighters will get shells. Apologize to who? Repent to who? 140 million Russians. Please tell me who I should apologize to, so that my guys die 2 times less than they do today. At present, every day, 2 times more fighters of Wagner and other units die, since we cannot cover them due to the shell hunger. He called on those responsible to give Wagner shells, and accused those who plotted against him of working for the enemy and against Russia. Prigozhin also added that the Wagner group only gets 20% of the artillery shells requested by them. The commander of the Vostok Battalion of DPR, Alexander Khodorkovsky, added
This is
his
where he started
perspective
getting
to this
himself
problem,
getting a
saying
target
that
on his
Wagner
back
was now actually
from
getting the
this
same
moment.
amount of artillery shells as all other units.
Well, no, it was
Evidently,
coming before, but this
Wagner used to
solidified the
have
target.
preferential treatment regarding supplies, which were getting depleted a year into the war. Notably, Ukrainian officials have earlier claimed decreased artillery usage by Russia, indicating their shell hunger. Back in December 2022, Budanov stated that Russia was using
Crazy,
20,000
we're in
shells per day,
2024 and it's still
a
ongoing.
3-fold decrease from the start of the war. Most recently, Budanov claimed that the Russian artillery stocks were at 30% of their pre-war level, and that they were trying to
30%.
mitigate this issue by purchasing shells from Iran. According to Budanov, Russia has already imported 20,000 shells from Iran, which is insufficient to solve their shell hunger. If this problem persists, and Russia does not find a way to solve it, it will create huge problems for them. A possible change in the Chinese approach towards the war in Ukraine will be a welcome development for Russia concerning its shell hunger. Throughout the second half of February, the US President, the Secretary of State, and the CIA chief have all claimed that China is considering providing military supplies to Russia. This includes UAVs, artillery, and ammunition. Biden has already publicly warned China against making this decision. China has also stepped up its
So, like, we don't want it to happen, but it's hypocritical that Biden saying, no, you can't do it when he's propping up Ukraine. I'm glad he's propping up Ukraine. I'm glad we're supporting Ukraine. I support Ukraine. But I'm just saying, hypocritical.
I see you. You haven't liked the video yet. Why not? Go on. Go like it. While you're at it, you know you want to subscribe. And if you want to go to our social medias, all the links you need are in the description box down below. And you might as well head over to our Patreon as well, where you can get extra bonus content if you're enjoying this. That link's in the description box down below. But we'll get straight back into the video. Love you guys.
Diplomatic activity, as on February 24th, it proposed its 12-point peace plan for Ukraine. While the Chinese proposal had points which would be against the Ukrainian and Western positions, such as the abandonment of unilateral sanctions and a thinly veiled attack on NATO expansion under the guise of abandoning the Cold War mentality.
Pretty sure
the point
India
on respect for sovereignty is something that Putin would have preferred not to see in this document.
Sanctions as well, right?
Ukraine and the US have rejected the Chinese peace proposal, calling it insufficient and lacking substance, while Putin's spokesperson Peskov stated that Russia would study the proposal, but at the moment we do not see the premises for this matter to take a peaceful path. It seems China is considering two options for taking a more proactive stance toward the war in Ukraine. On one hand, by making this peace proposal, China is arguably positioning itself as a potential mediator in this war, as two other potential mediators, Turkey due to the catastrophic earthquake that took place in the country, and Israel due to finally starting to lean towards supporting Ukraine, may be out of the negotiations game, at least for the time being. On the other hand, if China really does provide weapons to Russia, it will have massive geopolitical implications, even beyond the war in Ukraine. If China commits to supporting Russia at a fraction of the Western support to Ukraine, this may be a major headache to Ukraine, as Russia would be getting much needed artillery shells, drones, and many other things the Russian army may desperately need. This would mean that China has truly announced itself as an economic and geopolitical rival to the USA. But if China makes this decision, it should be ready for sanctions from the West and possibly lose the biggest market for its exports in the United States and Europe, which accounts for 50% of Chinese exports. At this point, Russian and Chinese officials are reportedly working on the official visit of the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and if it happens, it may be interpreted as a further demonstration of China's support of Russia.
I remember reading about it.
Ukraine is currently fighting a defensive war, but is expected to launch its own counteroffensive sometime in spring. There was a notable move by Zelensky to dismiss the Joint Forces commander, Eduard Moskalev, on February 26th for unknown reasons. Ukraine is having difficulties in the Bakhmut section, but according to Konrad Mazika, they are keeping its reserves for the counteroffensive and are using units that had already been deployed in those sections to bolster its defenses. According to the Ukrainian military intelligence official Vadim Skibitsky, one of the strategic goals of the Ukrainian counteroffensive would be cutting the land corridor between Russia and Crimea. Ukraine is working for more military support from its allies to make it possible. For now, the support for Ukraine remains high. Polls conducted by Eurobarometer among citizens of the EU member states show high support for the European policy towards Ukraine at around 70%. On February 18th, during the Munich Security Conference, British Prime Minister Sunak said that Britain would be the first country to give long-range weapons to Ukraine. British Defence Minister Wallace stated that while the supply of fighter jets to Ukraine during the war is not out of the question, it would take a while before Ukraine gets them. On the same day, France pledged 25 AMX-10R armoured fighting vehicles. There has been some concern about the promised Western tanks in this period.
What are the concerns?
US defense official Christine Wormuth stated that the US could take more than a year to deliver M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. According to the Times, Ukraine expects close to 320 tanks, but only 50 of them will be on the battlefield by April. Clearly, this is insufficient for the major breakthrough that Ukraine is trying to achieve. Ukraine's Defense Minister Reznikov has claimed that Ukraine will have at least 2 tank battalions of Leopard 2s and 6 or 7 tank battalions of Leopard 1s. The size of a tank battalion in Ukraine is usually over 30 tanks. There will also be tank units consisting of Challenger 2 and Abrams tanks. Notably, on February 24th, 4 Leopard 2s pledged by Poland arrived in Ukraine. Ukraine's allies committed to transferring more tanks to Ukraine, as Finland promised 3 Leopard 2s as part of its 13th military aid package, worth over 160 million euros. Sweden promised 10 Leopard 2s, along with Hawk and Iris-T air defense systems, while Germany increased its pledge to 18 Leopard 2s.
What is NEOM? This is Neom. Or here to be more.
On February 20th, US President Biden visited Kyiv to send a message of unwavering support on the eve of the war anniversary. He announced a new military aid package during his meeting with Zelensky, worth $500 million,
difficulties at the moment,
which reportedly includes
with those?
HIMARS ammunition,
28th of
anti-tank weapons,
December.
and radars, among other things.
Currently having issues.
According
People
to
don't want
CNN,
it.
Russia was planning to carry out the test launch of its Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missiles during Biden's visit, but it failed. On the same day, the Israeli parliamentary delegation visited Kyiv, which was followed by the visit of Italian Prime Minister Meloni. And on February 20th, Japan announced $5.5 billion worth of financial support to Ukraine. On February 23rd, the Australian Defence Minister Miles said that they were preparing a $33 million military aid package to Ukraine, including drones. On February 24th,
So much
the United
money's being
States
thrown
pledged a
into this
$2
war.
billion military aid package to Ukraine. This package includes additional HIMARS ammunition, 155mm artillery shells, Cyberlux K8, Switchblade 600, Altius 600 and Jump 20 drones. On February 25th, the EU Council announced its 10th sanction package against Russia. The focus was on prohibiting exports of goods that could be used in military production. On February 26th, the Croatian media reported that Zagreb plans to send 14 Mi-8 helicopters to Ukraine. On the same day,
They're just
Saudi
getting so
Arabia
much.
pledged
It's
$410
crazy.
million worth of humanitarian aid. Germany sent additional military assets. Estonia promised a package worth 400 million euros, and Bulgaria started producing 122mm
how is
artillery
Russia
shells
supposed
for
to keep
Ukraine.
up with the US and the
On
whole
February
of the EU?
27th, it was reported that a Serbian company sold 3,500 pieces of ammunition for Grad MLRS. Ukraine continues getting significant support from its allies, but it needs to find a
Look at
way
all
to
that.
ensure the delivery of Western tanks as soon as possible if it intends to start its offensive in spring. Putin's only notable diplomatic response to increased Western support since the turn of the year was the announcement of the suspension of the Strategic Arms Reduction Nuclear Treaty with the United States during his State of the Union speech, where he merely reiterated all his earlier narratives attacking Ukraine and the West. According to the Wall Street Journal, the UK, France and Germany are working on a NATO-Ukraine treaty, which will not grant a path of membership to Ukraine or any security guarantees, but will supposedly give more access to Western weapons.
Okay,
These
interesting.
countries are apparently pushing Kyiv towards a settlement with Russia, since they do not trust that Ukraine is capable of liberating all of its territories, while the Western military and economic support cannot continue indefinitely. Paris and Berlin have more or less followed this path for a while now, but if there is some truth to this report, this is a significant change in British policy, as the UK has been a key ally for Ukraine since the start of the war,
I
along
thought
with
we
the
were
USA,
strong.
Poland and Baltic states. Ukraine will likely rely on its counter-offensive to prove its reluctant allies wrong, to show that there is indeed a military solution to this war. There are interesting developments related to the Moldovan breakaway region of Transnistria, ruled by another separatist regime backed by Moscow. On February 21st, Moldovan Prime Minister Dorin Recian claimed that Russia plans to take over the Chisinau airport to deploy its troops and organize a coup in Moldova. This was followed by Zelensky's statement that Ukraine would be ready to help Moldova reclaim Transnistria if requested. On February 23rd, the Russian Ministry of Defense accused Ukraine of planning to invade Transnistria. On February 27th, the Ukrainian Southern Command reported that it had moved some of its forces to the border with Moldova to protect its border in case of a provocation.
Interesting.
At this point,
What
Russia
happens
is in
here?
no position to defend Transnistria, as it simply lacks a land corridor to send troops in. Russia reportedly only has 1,000 to 2,000 troops in this area, and defeating them for the battle-hardened Ukrainian army should not be a major
It'd be
problem.
easy.
And many speculate that Ukraine may just do that to capture vast reserves of ammunition in Russian military bases. Both countries
would
are struggling
kinda get it.
economically as they enter the second year of the war.
I would kind
Ukraine's
of get it.
2023 budget deficit equals $38 billion, which it intends to resolve with the help of its allies, while Russia has spent a whopping third of its budget, $114.4 billion, on the war in
shit.
2022. which does not seem sustainable for Moscow. According to Budanov, we will see battles that decide the fate of the war in the spring of 2023. He brought up a football analogy, saying that the score is now 1-1, and it is the 70th minute. The losses are mounting for both sides. The British Ministry of Defence claimed on February 17th that Russia has likely suffered close to 200,000 casualties. According to the US government estimates, Wagner has lost 4,500 men dead in the period of December 15th to February 15th. There have been no credible updates on Ukrainian casualties. According to the Oryx blog, the visually confirmed equipment losses for Russia as of March 1st are 1,782 tanks, 3,739 vehicles, 233 command posts and communication stations, 617 artillery pieces and vehicles, 178 multiple rocket launchers, 75 aircraft, 78 helicopters, and 194 drones. For Ukraine, these are 470 tanks, 1,364 vehicles, 9 command posts and communication stations, 244 artillery pieces and vehicles, 40 multiple rocket launchers, 59 aircraft, 31 helicopters, and 85 drones. We will talk about this conflict more in the coming weeks, so to ensure you don't miss our videos, subscribe and press the bell button.
You know you need to be subscribed to their channel and have their bell icon hit. If you haven't already, head over to their page, that link's in the description box down below. If you're enjoying my reactions, looking forward to future reactions, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.